Want to drive faster? Listen in as Kinch Rendell, an SCCA National Trophy winner and multi-time Pro Solo champion himself, interviews the best autocrossers in the land. He talks fast and drives even faster. And now here's your host, Kinch Rendell.
Hello, this is Kinch, and today's show features a national champion in CSP, a Miata of course, as well as a nationals course designer. Only a year ago did he design one of our 2 courses. He also has done quite a bit of coaching. You might have seen him at starting line schools if you made it to those. And much, much more. This year, he's driving something much faster. You'll get to hear a bit about that as well. And just lots of other stories and just insights and thoughts he has from the evolution schools, once again, to starting line schools. He's trophied quite a bit at nationals, only missing out 2 years, one being his first and one in STU. This episode features John Hunter. Let us know what you think. Enjoy. All right, John, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, everybody appreciates it. They don't want to hear me talking the whole time.
Sure.
Where are you at?
Omaha, Nebraska, about 45 miles away from Mecca, so to speak. I'm lucky in that regard. So we have the national site for our playground.
And you were probably there this past weekend.
Yeah, we had a test and tune on Saturday, and then we had an event on Sunday that we kind of threw in. We wasn't originally scheduled, but I and a few other people kind of talked our solo chair into throwing one more because we were going to have about a 5-week break between our last event and middays, and we're like, "Whoa, we need to throw something in there, get some more seat time." So got thrown and got it done. Now we just got a couple weeks off before middays, and then off to the big show.
Oh, I know. I can't believe it's already here. Brian
right?
was in Packwood with me. He's like, "You don't really have time to get your car back together." I'm like, "Don't say that. I think anything's possible. It can all happen."
Well, Jesse calls cars together, so anything can happen.
Exactly. He finally made it out. He was calling me to get tires off the Sprint, which was out at the barn, the farm area. So kind of crazy. I'm like, I don't get to go. I told the wife, I'm like, hey, yeah, there's an event. Could I go to it Saturday, come back home Sunday for the party? She's like, no, you were gone last weekend. And that meant Packwood driving 6 days gone. But I still floated the idea. So Omaha,
right.
Nebraska, have you lived there long, the whole time?
Yeah, actually, funny enough, I grew up not far from you in Greeley, Colorado. But we moved from there when I was around 10. So I've been in the Lincoln or Omaha area ever since. So yeah, I've been here a very, very long time.
And you started autocrossing when?
Right around 2001 is when it first started. It was shortly after I bought my second Miata. My first Miata got hit by a drunk driver and totaled. And then I found autocross in between, funny enough. I had some friends with Subaru 2.5 RSs that were running an STS at the time. I was actually thinking about getting a WRX, and I kept finding myself on Auto Trader looking for Laguna Blue Miatas, and I decided that was a sign, and I went down to Atlanta and bought a mild, emphasis on mild, CSP build Miata for my daily driver, and then started at that.
So the Miata was in CSP to begin with, just not fully prepped.
Oh, not even close. Yeah, it had Takiko aluminas on it. I can't even remember which lowering springs. The wheels that were on it, I think, were some 21-pound Borbit wheels, Yokohama AVS intermediate tires, like a BSP exhaust. So, I mean, it was a base model with a limited slip out of a later gen car, and I think he just ran locally there. He definitely wasn't running at national level. But it was definitely not stock, so I was forced into CSP because there was no ST class at the time that car would fall into.
Nice. So I started about the same time as you, but I didn't have the fortune to actually like Miatas to get into what I've heard is the ultimate starter car, which is a Miata.
Right, yeah. It's funny enough, I never liked Miatas when they came out. I might surprise you or may not surprise you, like some of the other people. One of my first cars was a Honda CRX SI. And I love that car. But I didn't like the Miatas when they first came out. I thought I didn't understand them. But when I got to a point where I could start looking for a car to buy, I wanted something fun. I wanted something that handled well. and that I could add some power to if need be, but really wanted to focus on the handling. And everything I read in every magazine kept telling me Miatas were the thing. And so finally I bit the bullet and took one for a test drive, and it left with me. So,
you're like, we will. And what else have you driven? Take us through the cars.
Well, yeah. Start off with the '94 Miata. From there, I hopped into 2.5 RS that I ran in STS. From there, we went to C Street in a NC MX-5. That was a fun year. Lots of really good drivers in C Street. There always is, but it was a really good year. And from there, STU and a Subaru STI. Then from there, got into the infamous Bubba. Was lucky enough to be offered to drive that car. And then I got the what I always said was the poster car, the car I always wanted to drive when it was a local events, the CSP car. Got offered to drive that, and that was a no hesitation moment. And then drove that for quite a few years, and then Mr. Vermalm asked me if I would co-drive with him this year in the E-Mod Camaro. And once again, I actually took some time to think about that one, not because I didn't want to drive it, but leaving CSP was hard. It was a really fun class with a lot of really talented drivers that are really good people. It was kind of the same for STS for me. Same situation where I really enjoyed the group you raced with. But it was a bucket list item. I can kind of give you a rundown of why I made all those car changes. There's actually a very specific reason for doing what I did. But Ron's car kicked off the final one for me, which is high horsepower rear wheel drive, is something I hadn't tackled yet. And I wanted to give that a shot. So
kind of like you had a wish list almost, or a, hey, I should drive all these things. And this is me thinking goal setting and such. And basically you've done it.
Yeah, it's I know you talked about, in other podcasts, what you learn from driving all sorts of different cars, and what had happened is my blue Miata, I did turbocharging because power is fun, and that put me in SM2. Well, I was running SM2 on 15 by 7.5 inch wheels with 205 V710s, and having a good old time locally. And actually, at one of the local events, happened to raw time Mr. Becker, Mr. McCabe in the CSP car back when they were on 13s. And they said, listen, if you can run times with us, you need to go to nationals and run there and see how you do. So I said, all right, let's do this. And at the time, my car still had the soft top in it. It was still my daily driver. Just had teen flex suspension, whatnot. And I went down to nationals on the Kumo 710s that I've been running all year long and did 2 track days on, and went after it. And my goal was mid-pack. I figured first year at nationals, if you can get mid-pack, that's pretty good. And I just happened to get 15th out of 31. So
on the wrong tires note, right? Totally wrong tires. Too skinny.
But to take a longer story and try to shorten it up a little bit, because I can be long-winded sometimes, people tell me. What had happened is the next year I decided to go for it. I got 15 by 8 wheels because that was the 225s were the big wheel at the time for SM2 for the Miatas. And I ordered Hoosiers. I took the soft top out of the car, got the car down to just over 2,000 pounds. I took the AC out, everything. I mean, I was going for it. I wanted to see how I could actually do. And I got the Hoosiers in, got them mounted up on the wheels, drove down to Kansas City for the first event of the year, put the wheels on the car, and was just looking them over and noticed for some reason my Hoosiers said R7s, not A7s. And that's when I learned that there's a different compound. And I tried to make that work for about half a year, and needless to say, I could never get heat in the tires the way I needed to. And I got frustrated. So I just said, you know what? I'm done trying to drive this car this year. I can't afford another set of tires. I'm just going to go to all the local events, and I'm going to see who will let me co-drive with them. And I was lucky enough to have just a bunch of random different people let me drive their cars, and I drove an Integra Type R. I drove, I think, an MR2. Just a whole bunch of different cars I got to hop into, all different kind of drivetrains. And what I noticed was I was picking up something new every time I drove a different car. So I decided that if I could make it happen, what I wanted to do was try to get into a different car each year with a different drivetrain, our compound tires versus street tires, and just see all the different variations of cars that I could drive and figure out which one works best for my driving style, and then also what can I take from each car and use in the future, sort of putting a tool in the toolbox type thing. And I got lucky enough that I got some people to offer me co-drives, and I just kept riding that wave.
And what I really like is, especially if you were intentional about that, you were thinking, hey, if I can drive these things, what can I learn? That's huge, because I think the first 5-10 years, if I ever drove someone else's car, I didn't think what I could learn. I'm like, oh, can I figure this out at all? Whereas recently when I drove the FRS a couple times, it's like, man, my style is not working. I need to copy Brian on this. And I've been telling people that. I'm like, it took me a whole event of not doing well, then riding with him again going, I've got to do that. So that's one thing to point out. It's so huge that if somebody jumps in somebody else's car, think, what is different about this and what can you learn from it? That's huge that you did that.
Exactly, and that was kind of the point, because I figured, okay, so if I'm in a car and it starts doing something I don't understand, if I have this background of all these different types of cars, there might be something I can take from that experience to use to drive the other car well.
Exactly.
At least that was my thought process.
And did you take notes of these things, writing anything down, or just mental notes of, hey, WRX does this?
Yeah, it was more just mental notes. It was, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I've always been fairly adept at hopping into a car and driving it fairly well, which helps as an instructor. But I figured I could only make that better by driving all these different cars. And so I just took mental notes, and what I've learned is I have a certain type of car that I really enjoy driving. I grew up, I loved Porsche 911s. Those were like, oh my God, if I could have one of those cars someday, that would be the thing. And I've driven them recently, and I'm kind of like, no, that's not my deal. They're great cars, but I've learned I'm very much a front-engine rear-wheel drive person from the vehicle dynamics of it. I don't know if it's just there's something about it, the way those cars drive versus a mid-engine car or front-wheel drive or anything like that, that I just enjoy more as a driver. And when you enjoy it more, I think you excel at it better, or easier, I should say.
Yeah, good point. Most things, if you like it, you'll put more effort into it, have a better experience overall, just with the positivity, I'd say.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, Bubba was awesome. The CRX and STS. I love that car as well. But
well, tell people, I wrote down, tell people who Bubba is, what car that is, whose car that is.
Gosh, and I wish I could remember everybody that was involved with that, because, Hayward was involved, and Bill Bounds, and I'm sure O'Malley, a bunch of people, but Bubba is a little red CRX created, I'm presuming, in the Atlanta region, knowing those guys, that became more famous than almost anybody that's ever driven it. It was a little red CRX that had a big name decal on the hood that says, "Hello, my name is Bubba." And I remember I drove that car down to Kansas City the first year we were driving it. And I went down, my co-driver couldn't make it. And it was neither our car. It was Andy Clark owns the car. He still does. He'd bought it, and he was in the Navy and had to on a boat all the time. He's like, listen, why don't you guys drive the car and develop the car while I'm gone? Because we changed the shocks and stuff like that. And I drove it down to Kansas City for an event, and I parked it along some other STS cars, and I just heard someone yell, "Oh my God, it's Bubba!" And I'm just like, what? And I mean, this random guy from STS, I mean, he knew the car and was like, "Oh my God, it's Bubba," and just was so happy to see Bubba the car. Was there at the event. So its reputation definitely preceded it, and it's a testament to the gentlemen who were involved with it, I think. But it was a really fun car to drive, and I had a blast running that group.
Yeah, once again, camaraderie and stuff.
So.
Were you always co-driving it with somebody, pretty much?
Yeah, I've always had co-drivers because I've always been, well, obviously it's never my car, so I always got a chance to drive with somebody. Usually, a couple times I actually got to be second driver, but, CSP, actually the one year I won, McCabe let me be the second driver. Never happened again, funny enough. Yeah, I was typically with a co-driver, Ronnie Geibel and C Street. John Simmons was my co-driver in both the 2.5 RS and in Bubba, the Sierra X and STS. Both in STS. Pat Lipsinick in STU driving Christy Carlson's car. Obviously Matt McCabe and Sue Eccles in CSP, and now with Ron. So always had a co-driver. And the next year I'll be in my own car for the first time in forever. And I've actually debated I have a few people that have expressed interest co-driving, and I think it'd be fun to have a co-driver. I like everybody that I've talked to about it, but I'm debating if I want to just take a year and drive by myself at the same time. I'm not sure. I haven't decided on that one yet.
Yeah, if nothing else, you can always try a few events that way if you haven't done that in a while. At Nationals, every time I've not had a co-driver, it's just so weird. It's like, oh, I'm here by myself almost. What's going on? I'm not busy. There's not a lot going on. It's kind of been a little weird, honestly. It's like I'd rather be changing tires even if I thought they were too hot or something, which isn't going to happen often, but this has been kind of odd. So tell us, when you started, how soon did you feel that you got quick? Were you quicker than co-drivers usually? How much did that help you?
It's kind of funny because when I first got the Miata, I went out to an event. It was an autocross on a go-kart track in Marshalltown, Iowa. And I thought, this car's got suspension on it, and it's got the 15-inch wheels on it, and all this stuff, so it should be pretty quick. And I went out there, and there was these bone stock first-gen Miatas that just kicked my ever-loving butt. And I couldn't figure it out. Of course, I could not equate it to driving. That just didn't make any sense. At least I had. And that's when I realized that there are such things as R compounds as well. So I jumped on those probably sooner than I should have. But I didn't have anybody to run against in my class. And so I decided that I wanted to just try to go for the fastest time I could. And back then, fastest time of day was something that was kind of attainable on our small lots. So that's what I gun for. But I guess to answer your question, I've been decently quick, but you're always learning and always getting faster. And I'm still learning. I'm still trying to get faster. I've still had my butt handed to me several times by other drivers. So it's gone both ways for sure.
But with the co-driving, did it help? Did you have data, video? Did you look at that stuff? That kind of like that part of the co-driving, was it helpful for you or the co-driver?
The data stuff we've never really used. And that's something I definitely plan on using whether I have a co-driver or not next year. Matt McCabe and I always talked about getting data, and we never did. We always just kind of shared information back and forth from our runs. We rode with each other a couple times, but it's really interesting when you're in the right seat versus the left seat, how faster it seems like you're going than what you just went if you do back-to-back runs. But we've never had data. We've always just kind of talked it out, said, hey, listen, the car's doing this in this corner, it's doing that in that corner. How are you attacking this line? This is how I'm attacking that line. We've shared information, but we've never actually had data to support exactly what we're saying.
And how often did you ride with each other?
Oh, a couple times. I mean, not much, just because we felt like we were both running very similar lines. We might attack a corner slightly different, but the lines were never really, we weren't really separated in lines or anything like that. So we weren't picking up on anything there. But we did pick up a little bit on, I have a tendency to attack a corner a little bit too much, or a little bit more aggressively than Matt, and I've realized it's too much recently, where Matt was usually earlier on the brakes and probably a little earlier on the throttle typically, but I was more of a trail breaker where he wouldn't trail brake at all. So we're just kind of, but that was the nice thing about that kind of stuff is I learned, okay, I need to be a little bit earlier on the brakes. I'm still working on that. I still try to go a little too hard in the corner sometimes. trying to use that trail braking technique, but it's
that's it. Yeah, and the big point for people I think take away from that is you guys are driving the same car, you're equally as fast, and yet you have totally different styles, which kind of goes against what I would really think you could accomplish when setting up a car, especially even a CSP Miata. I've heard things like, oh, you can't trail brake Miatas, yet several people say, oh, yeah, it's fine to do that.
Oh, yeah, you can trail. That's the car I learned how to trail brake in. So I think you can trail brake Miatas. But yeah, it's one thing we've always learned is, whether he would or I would win would kind of depend on the course because of the way we attacked corners. And, sometimes his style would be more beneficial. And that's where we wanted to get data because we understood that we had slightly differing styles. And we always figured if we could learn how to apply each other's styles at the right moments, that we would be that much faster.
I think
that's what the top drivers do.
Yeah.
They're adept enough, they know, okay, they're going to attack the corner more my style on certain corners and more Matt style on other corners. And that's when you get a Billy Davis or Tom O'Gorman, They're just on point on all the different corners.
So, and were you, either of you, able to pull that off? Where like, hey, you know what? My braking style is going to be different for this corner versus that one. Have you put that in your tool belt?
You try. Am I successful doing it all the time? No. That's something that's a constant work in progress. Like I try to pick one or two things each year that I want to work on. This year, I'm working on, the goal was to work on how I release the brake. Once again, with the trail braking, that kind of stuff, but just really focusing on that, and then also focusing a little bit more on slaloms and having quick hands, because I'm very much a slow hand driver. I'm really more comfortable in sweepers than quick transitions.
So would you say that's being smooth? Like, are you really smooth with the wheel?
Typically, yeah. I actually, recently someone proclaimed that I was pretty aggressive with the wheel. And I think there's a difference between, you can still be smooth and aggressive with the wheel at the same time. That's what I'm trying to incorporate. But, yeah, I'm very much comfortable on a road course and sweepers and stuff like that. Where you have, the slow input, that kind of thing. So a slalom's always been kind of a challenge for me to move my hands quick enough.
Yeah, because I feel like if you watch videos on YouTube enough, you can be as violent as you want to be. I mean, even on these street tires these days, you can really, really get aggressive with that wheel.
Yeah, you can get aggressive. And like I said, I think there's a difference between, you can be aggressive and smooth at the same time. You can't jerk the wheel by any means, but yeah, you can really be aggressive with it. And I think you have to be in a slalom because you have to be able to bounce, or I shouldn't say bounce, but move the weight from side to side in the car. And you can try to get there as quickly and as you can, but yet smoothly enough that you don't disrupt the car and send it, sliding, that kind of thing.
And is that the feel you would say you have? You would notice it because the car is sliding, or do you have a better sense of feel than even that?
I didn't catch the question correctly, I don't think.
So talking about, okay, you don't want to disrupt it, have too much weight transfer in my mind. Do you have the kind of feel that you're feeling, you notice it because the car's sliding? That's what I would say I have. I notice, okay, I'm over the limit because it slid, versus do you have like a sixth sense that's going to clue you in better?
No, I think at that point it's, you feel that obviously you've done too much. I don't think I'm at the point where I can sense I'm going to do it. So yeah, you feel that you've gone too far because all of a sudden you've upset the car. We talk about when we do like starting lines, the car's a toddler. You can only give it one thing to do at a time. Really, you can blend some things together, but you can't be throwing too much at it. So if you're going side to side, you can't accelerate, you can't brake. You've got to be careful with how quickly you try to throw it around. That didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, well, because when you're trail braking, you're doing two things, and that's where it's always so debatable. How much can I combine? And I guarantee you, I combine a lot of the stuff that you think, no, don't, like the course you came out here locally. I was breaking into that slalom like no other. I mean, hugely, that was my whole purpose. I'm like, okay, I can go faster outside the slalom than when I get into it, so how deep can I carry that speed into it?
Right, and that's where I know you've been talking about on the podcast about not taking the speed into the slalom, but slowing down before the slalom hits.
Yeah, most people...
So you're saying you were doing that...
I don't do that.
Into the second cone?
Well, I try to carry the speed as far as I can. In this case, because I felt like getting into that was a higher speed than what I could maintain in the slalom. So don't dare in that higher speed area. Don't slow down before I get there. Slow down at the last possible second. So if it can be the second cone, great. In this case, it was mostly the first cone. I was slowing, still trail braking around that first cone.
Gotcha.
And something tells me you would do that as well if you're a trail breaker. That may put you in that category.
Right, but at the same time, you got to be really careful with that going in between the first and second cone, because once you come off that brake, now all of a sudden the weight transfer is different. The weight transfer happens, so how the car's going to behave, it's hard to get into that rhythm. So I've been working on trying to get in that rhythm before the first cone. Get the car into the right speed.
Yeah, for most cases, I think that's the case. I remember Brian Clory, who watched my video of that one. He goes, "My car doesn't pivot like that." And I'm like, I don't know how the Civic pivots or not pivots. I mean, this is a front-wheel drive car. But he didn't think that FRS in stock form could go around that first cone like that. It's just, and that may be the case, like you saying the 911s. It's so weird when all the weight's missing from the front. I'm like, does not react like a Honda. I mash it and we just push out like no other. So it's interesting also, these different lines may be, or different things people are pulling off, maybe because of the weight transfer and also where the weight's already at over the wheels.
Yeah, and I think I want to say that a lot of us go for a similar line, but the car kind of dictates, depending on how you're driving it, where because that's one thing I've really focused on this year is running a tight line, even in the E-Mod car. I'm looking to be as tight as possible everywhere, because we have 700 horsepower, but anytime you carry extra distance, that's just extra time. So I'm really trying to focus in on using the power correctly within that tight line that exists.
And that comes back to John Ames, never go extra distance for extra speed, which anytime I'm getting sloppy, I'm like, did you just try to carry that speed and go wide? And something maybe finish this thought, or you said the type of car may dictate. We all try to take the same line, but at least in my mind, when you said that, the type of car may dictate how you're driving, how soon you're braking on the line we're all trying to run.
Right. I think that's accurate. You've got momentum cars and non-momentum cars, but I think I would think at least, well, like I said, with Ron's E-Mod car, we still try to drive it like a momentum car. Trying to find a way to describe this now. The tight line is always going to be the fastest line, and there might be slight variances on how you enter and how to set up for your exit and everything like that, but you still want to run a tight line. So I think no matter what car you're in, you're going to be running a similar line with slightly different approaches.
Because of what traction, how they turn, how they can rotate, like watching Chris Dorsey. I swear, because he can turn it with the gas pedal, and on those Avons, it just turns differently. I'm just like, wow, right. He just pivoted right there, and he pivoted. I'm like, I don't think I guess when it rotates, if I lift just correctly, can do that. So I love like the type of car on the same line. For some reason, I don't think I've heard that. It didn't make me think of that before ever. So I just keep making a little mental note here.
Yeah, think about it this way. Okay, so you mentioned Chris Dorsey, the way he rotates the car in the middle of the corner, and then he exits out. Now think about an STS car. When you're coming in, you're nosing the car over heavy. You get that rear end to rotate, and you accelerate out. Where you're applying the power might be different, but it also where you're braking and how late you brake versus where he brakes and so forth might be slightly different, but your lines are probably very similar.
Yeah. And that's the point at Nationals. If you're not running first, you can't pick your line anyway. The tight line's going to be clean, and everything else is going to be dirty at some point.
Right. No, that's very true. It's like when I designed the course last year, typically I leave a lot of room to create your own line. And I didn't do it as much as I normally do for that course, simply because I knew after Heat 2, it wasn't going to matter anyway.
Yeah.
You know, it's everybody's pretty much going to have to be on the same line because that's where the rubber's going to be.
Yep, and all the marbles will be everywhere else. So you say momentum cars.
Right.
The CSP Miatas are amazing. Like when I saw the one for sale, I think it was Kubo's old car, or Kubo's newer car, I was like, oh my goodness, $20,000, you can go really, really fast. Talk about the CSP Miatas. It's just insane. What do they have, 160 horsepower or something? They're under 2,000 pounds. What, 275? It's just insane.
Yeah, honestly, they are like one of the best cars for autocross, period, point blank. When you think about what an autocross car should do and having fun doing it, out of all the cars I've driven, CSP cars right at the top. It's just what those cars get away with, and it's a giggle a minute. The grip, they have power to rotate, but not enough power to kill you. They're so light, so nimble. They're a very, very fun car to drive. And honestly, they're a well set up Miata is also pretty intuitive to drive, at least for me. In the style that I like, I think it's easy to get in one of those and go pretty darn quick, very quickly.
And they're just so fast. I watch Scott Frazier a lot when I go to the West Coast. Just insane. I was blown away. I'm always blown away when I watch those cars.
Yeah, you talk about working on lifting. And a CSP car, you do a lot of lifting, and not a ton of braking for most elements. You're basically it's small weight transfers with throttle until you have a big braking moment. But you definitely use that. At least I did. I use that tool a lot in a CSP car.
And does it rotate then? How would you describe that? What the lift did, or just slowed you down a little bit?
Yeah, that's basically the thought process is, it's all weight transfer. So you do that slight lift to get some weight on the nose. You begin that turn, and that begins that rotation because the rear gets a little bit light, and then you just settle down as you throttle out. So it's just throw the weight on the nose just ever so briefly, but not. You don't have to brake to get all the weight up. You don't have to slow down that much. You just need to get enough weight so that the front wheels can do their job. And then you finish the throttle.
You got enough weight transfer, and once again, remember, the more weight on a tire, the more mechanical grip it gets. And at the same time, you're lightening the back, so hopefully that helps it. Just the front's gripping more, and maybe the back will slide around a little bit for you.
Exactly. Yep.
And would you notice it sliding and have to catch it much? For me, what I've realized is everybody says, "Oh, the car's moving." Until I have to catch it, I don't even think that it's loose. Like the word "loose" to me means I had to rotate the wheel, turn it to actually catch the car. How would you describe your thoughts around that, especially the CSP Miata?
In the CSP Miata, it's not so much you're unwinding ahead of time. If you drive it well, you're not catching it. You're putting it there. If that makes sense, it's you get that rotation started, and you're doing it deliberately, and it's not like you're getting a big slide out of it. It's just enough that you get the rear end to start to come around, and then you can finish it with a throttle. So
finish to catch it, open the wheel a little bit and apply throttle.
And apply throttle, yeah. And any residual slide you have is intentional, so that you're keeping the motor up, and you're not bogging it down. You're keeping those RPMs going, so that you can you don't lose any speed coming out.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like the karts, like especially the JA and JB. Like they want to keep those revs up because of the power range, the range.
Yeah, and once again, I think it's it's any front engine rear wheel drive car. You do the same thing with all cars. It's just the amount of time you need to use, or the amount of time you need to make that maneuver decreases tremendously. Like in a stock B Street Corvette, even though that's a great platform, obviously a great car right off the shelf, it takes a little time for that nose to come down. It takes a little time for it to roll over onto the side, for that rear end to slide out to come around just a little bit, and you catch it with the throttle and you go. The CSP car can do the same exact maneuver in far less time because it's more stiffly sprung. It's, got much more grip, and it's lighter.
So the weight transfer happens quicker. So there's less delay in all of it. Yep.
You can make everything, and that's the result of, or that's what allows you to run the faster time, is just everything that you need to do to get the weight to move around the car just happens quicker.
Plus the grip, and just, it is Miata. The answer is Miata.
Yeah, exactly.
So you already mentioned one time starting line school. Tell us about where all you've coached in addition to that, and your thoughts and how you've helped people and how it helps you.
Well, starting line school, Hayward, when he started that program up, asked me to be involved with that. I'd just started doing Evo schools for junior, but I'd been instructing locally for a little while, and also did some instructing out at local road courses. And so, starting line schools we've been doing all across the country. We've got, several instructors throughout, East Coast, West Coast, and then obviously I'm a middle, so I get to go both ways. I've been to New York, and I've also been out to San Francisco. So I get to go, and the cool thing about all that is you get to go to different regions and experience the different regions there. You get to introduce brand new people to autocross. You're kind of the welcoming committee. And you're going to help them learn how to drive their car fast and have fun doing it. Really, it's if there's a way to make it a full-time job, sign me up. Let me know. There's no high like the high of seeing that light bulb go off when you're talking to your student and you're explaining how to go through a slalom and feeling that weight transfer and being early on your turn and not turning at the cone, but beforehand, and when it clicks and they get it, that's just, I get just as excited seeing them pull that off or running a really good time at the end of the day through the autocross courses, you do as a good result at a national event.
And at that point, you get to see them take a lot of time off, which has got to be exciting. I mean, seeing, because they're like, oh wow, I just took 10 seconds off or 5 seconds off.
Yeah, that's the other thing is, they're starting brand new. And so sometimes you have guys come in and they have some natural talent. But still you're giving them the tools right off the bat. You're developing good habits versus them developing bad habits. And that time just comes flying off. The other thing that's cool about the school is we've not only had brand new students come through, but we get experienced drivers come through. I've had a student that has done every phase of Evo schools. In fact, in the Bowling Green school we did, it was Tom O'Gorman, Billy Davis, and I wish I could remember the gentleman's name. If I remember correctly, he was, he's in the Focus ST, and he was high up in the trophies last year at Nationals. And he came to do the school just to see
jealous.
What else he could pick up on.
Oh, yeah, I meant to make the one here. I just didn't pay attention to make sure everything could work out to do it.
What's great is it to me, it fits right in line with an Evo school. It doesn't step on any toes. They all work together very, very well. What I like about the Starting Line School for anybody is it's really, a serious back to basics when it comes to, the morning, we really focus on weight transfer. That's what I'm going after most with my students. Are we moving the weight to the nose? Are we moving it to the side of the car? Are we moving to where we know we're doing an oval? Then we do a slalom. We just practice doing slaloms. That's one of our sections where we just do slalom. That's all we're doing. And we're talking about how do we go through a slalom? What's the best way to go through a slalom? What's the hand trick? Are we late? Are we behind? How do we attack the slalom? Where are we putting our eyes in the slalom? That kind of thing. So it's all stuff that's usable, and it's a great refresher no matter what. And when you talk about the package deal where, you get a year membership with the SCCA and everything, it's just a phenomenal package. And of course, we always bring up Evo School and say, hey, next step is Evo Phase 1. Go get it. If you thought this was beneficial, that's going to take it to another level for you. So.
And how many of these people make the event the next day?
I would say it depends on the school, but if I were going to average it, I would say half.
Nice.
What usually happens is someone will sign up for it. Sometimes they won't even know there's an event the next day, and they've already got commitments. That's usually the biggest problem, is they simply won't know that, hey, the next day you get to go play, and you have this event, and they've already got prior engagement. What's really fun is when we start at the beginning of the day, we ask how many people are coming tomorrow, and we get a few hands come up, and then we ask again at the very end of the day. We say, hey, all right, how many people are coming back tomorrow? And invariably the hands double. It's just, they're like, holy cow, this is the most fun thing I've ever done. And that's part of the whole idea. And one thing I love about Hayward's approach and what he's trying to get done is the experience, not just the competition, not just the driving, but what is the experience of autocross. And we try to wrap that up into a package so that it's appealing to new people, so they want to come back, so they know it's a community. It's not just the act of driving fast around some cones.
Okay, there's a lot of gearheads and people that love cars and go talk about cars and look at cars with you all day long.
Yes, and if we all sat back and talked about, I think you and Jinx talked about, you map 2 phases of why you go do this thing. And for me, I'm ultra competitive, and almost to a fault. And that's the thing I had to work on and continue to work on. But at the end of the day, it's the people. I look so much forward to nationals. A, to race and see how I do, but B, I get to see all my friends from across the country that I've made all these years, and it's almost a shame it's only a week, because you just don't feel like you have enough time to really get together and hang out with people and catch up and have a beer and just hang out. That's the part that really brings me back, is I love that aspect of it. The social aspect of it is just, it's so fun.
Yeah, and I can say from my perspective, it's such an experience. At least back when I first went, I'm not sure which year, if you first went those first couple of years, but seeing 60 and 70 S2000s all lined up, or 20 Type R Integras. It was just like you're at your local area and you see a few cars, and all of a sudden you saw so many different cars because there was 1,000 of them. Just insane.
Yeah, the first year I went to Nationals, I didn't even notice half of it because I was just swimming. You're just, okay, I'm here at Nationals, and it's for someone who has ADD, it's crazy. And you just get through the event. And each year, you go back, you see more, and you get to know people, and you get to see all the cars, and it's just the eye candy for vehicles. It just, I don't know who owns the car, but I don't know if it's run recently, but there was the carbon fiber body CVCC with a Kawasaki motor in the passenger seat. And I remember the first time I saw that, and I was just, are you kidding me? This thing is just, it's too cool. I mean, it's just black carbon fiber bodywork, lime green motor in the passenger seat, and you're just like, what is this thing, and who is the awesome mind that came up with it? It's, yeah, for a person who's into cars, like I am, it's just, yeah, you've dived into heaven.
Yeah, all of a sudden you see every single class and all the different cars in there, whereas locally that just probably can't happen anywhere across the country.
No, yeah, you just, I mean, the first time I saw an A-Mod car, obviously Nationals. I remember distinctly the first time I saw an A-Mod car run. I was working the course, and it was mind-boggling. It just, the acceleration on those things was just insane.
Like, is this safe? Should I be standing out here with these planes that are upside down zipping around?
Yeah, and then I got the pleasure of actually driving one a couple of years back, and I drove it poorly, but I got to drive it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm glad I'm somewhat scared of that stuff. I don't want to ruin my life. Be like, okay, now nothing else is going to be fun.
I came back after the run. I looked at him, It was, Jenny O'Malley now. It was Jenny Williams' dad's A-Mod car. And I came back and I looked at David O'Malley and I'm like, how'd I do? And he kind of giggled at me and goes, you weren't even using the aero yet. And I'm like, oh, damn.
Yeah, because your brain you have to probably push yourself to have any clue to learn that you can do that. Like, you're a good driver, you don't go over the limit that much, but in that car you need to expand what you can feel.
Right. It's you're used to the mechanical grip that the tires give you. You're not thinking about the extra grip that the aero's giving you on top of that.
Yeah.
Until you actually start pushing into it and getting it, I can't imagine how long it takes to actually really get into an A-Mod car and drive it well, like 10/10s, and use all the aero. It's just, I would try it. I'm not. If someone wants to offer, I'm down. But
like, let's have a test day and go over and over and over.
Right.
That's why I wonder. I feel like it was funny when our son saw me drive the FRS the first time. He goes, "So you're not an alien?" I was like, "Yeah, I don't just expect to hop in any car and go fast." Well, actually, I do expect to, but yet I know in reality it's probably not going to happen. Even if it's a car equally my speed, it's just things don't work the same to me yet. I don't know how to. I guess in this case, tone it back was what I needed to do.
Right, and to me, there's everybody wants to be an alien, but there's a very few of those out there. And I feel pretty confident to say that I can get in a car and I can get to 90% of it fairly quickly. I feel like I can pick up on the grip levels the car will have, but not like Tomo or Billy or Daddio or those guys who just they've got an extra sensory. It's crazy. Just amazingly good drivers.
Have you been around them enough to kind of know what they do? Like you'd mentioned earlier, applying different skills and different techniques to different corners. Do you have enough insight into what they might do?
Yeah, I worked at school in Kansas City with Tom, and we talked about a bunch of different things. And it kind of comes back to what Ross Bentley said. The racing guys kind of live in the braking zone. And it's not just the application of the brake, but it's also how you're coming off the brake. I think a lot of it is in that area of being able to car and use the brake to that level. That really it starts to separate the men and the boys there.
It's so crazy that like Tomo driving or playing video games a ton. How the feel of braking, which we all know is so important, how that translated. I wonder if it translated right away or did it take a few runs or something?
Well, the question is, did he pick up on the braking feel from the video games or did he pick it up from karts?
Yeah.
Because he did a lot of karting as well. And I played a ton of Gran Turismo. So I know exactly what he's talking about when we're talking about, how do you look ahead? I've got a very visual memory, so when it comes to I can cheat a little bit because I scan a lot. I don't probably look ahead as well as I should. I've been, I always work hard at it, but, and when it comes to like left foot braking, I've never been a left foot braker, but this year I have to be because of the way the E-Mod car is set up.
Oh,
but,
wow.
I feel fairly comfortable left foot braking because of years and years of Gran Turismo. I've always used my left foot brake in Gran Turismo.
Yep.
And then the BMW ZHP that I had, which is now gone because of the hailstorm, when I knew I was going to be driving with Ron, I immediately started left foot braking in my daily. Just practicing on coming to a stop at a stoplight without any disruption in the car. Like when you come to a stop, it just stops nice and smooth. And then, working on, okay, I want to brake at 40% going into this roundabout this time. Okay. Let's go a little harder. Let's go 75% brake. Just constantly working on, can I match the feel of my right foot with my left foot? And just constantly doing that, even in my daily driver.
Yeah,
to try to get ready for that E-Mod car.
Yeah, I do the same thing. If I'm right foot braking, I'm like, hey, use the left foot and really consciously think about the feel, especially like you're saying, coming off. I can't say it enough times. When I'm driving my best, I am conscious of how I'm coming off that brake pedal. Like, it's so smooth. It's not abrupt. I'm okay going abruptly into the brakes usually, but trying to come off so smoothly and noticing how smooth the car is because of that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I said, that's one of the things I want to work on this year. But I'm already throwing the left foot brake in there, so I'm kind of doubling up on. Okay, I'm learning left foot braking, but I'm also trying to work on how I come off. So I'm doing everything with the new foot.
Yeah.
And what's really weird is, so when I do schools and I hop in a student's car, I never left foot brake.
Well, once
I'm
again,
back
maybe
to
it's
my
just because your right foot's so much.
immediately.
Yeah, that's more ingrained, right? More practice there.
Yeah, so I've actually got into both Ron's car and a student's car and started to go for the brake with both feet. Just like, I'm not sure which one I'm using. It's like, okay, yeah, just pick one, John, and go.
How many of these cars are automatics that show up to the starting line?
15%, maybe 20. Not very many. You get a few. Actually, the first ND I ever drove, unfortunately, was an automatic. But it still blew my mind how good it was straight out of the box, even as an automatic. That's really what started me down the rabbit hole of wanting to get an ND. And it's all Ron Bauer's fault, and he knows it, as to why I bought one. So he took me, we went out and had a beer when I visited him in Seattle. We did some karting, and I was there for work. Agreed to meet up and do some indoor karting and have a good beer. And he picked me up in the SDR car. I didn't even get to drive it, and I was just riding it. And I'm like, this thing is just insane for a car. It's just so much fun just riding. It reminds me of an Elise, like a poor man's Elise, and how it feels, how light it feels, and its responsiveness. And I actually got give me a second. Ian Manx. Yeah. He just drove an ND for the first time at the school we did out in Denver. And I went up to him, I was like, okay, tell me I'm wrong. Does an ND not feel, I'm just talking about feel, is there not a similarity to how an Elise feels when it comes to how light the car is and everything? And he's like, yeah, you're right. So I feel vindicated, in that. But yeah, it's great. Once again, it's, everybody's sick of hearing about Miatas, especially Chris Dorsey, but I still think they're great cars.
Yeah, that's where I've not been in them either. And I can tell everybody, Ron's blue Miata looks fantastic.
Oh. I wonder if he's gotten tired of hearing how beautiful it is yet.
I don't know what color that is. You probably know. And I forget how he got that one, or if it was hail damage or what, but I'm like, oh my goodness, that car looks good.
He got been rolled. And the blue is a Jaguar blue. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a Jag paint code that they used.
That car pops. Oh, have you ever driven a BSP car? And I say this because the engine in the STR car just grenaded, and I'm thinking, man, I'm not even driving the car. Some other people are. I kind of admitted it will go back to STR, but I was like, in my mind, that becomes a BSP car. Because of what Chris Mayfield said was one of the best handling cars he's ever driven.
Right, that's you got to wonder, because an S2000 is another really, really good sports car. And knowing what a CSP Miata is like, I've never driven a SP prepared S2000, but I got to imagine that it's right there. What do those get down on weight? Do you know?
I don't know. I meant to send off a message just to find out what all you would do. I kind of talked to Mark Melcher a little bit about this, about what all you can swap from AB2 to AP1, which engine, keep the other transmission. So I don't know. What are they, 2,500 to start with? How much can you get out of that?
Yeah, that's the question, I suppose. Because I know the CSP cars, if you're looking to have a car with longevity, you're right about 2,000. You can get lighter than that, but as Mr. Schenker would attest, you start to run into issues with reliability, unfortunately. But then to me, that's the thing, is autocross. It's a game of time and distance, lightweight over power, and mistake management.
Yeah, would you say mistake management, that every run you're making micro mistakes or smaller mistakes all the time?
Oh, you always make a mistake. No, I even on your best run, there's always going to be something you leave on the table. I don't know if anybody's ever done the perfect run. I don't know if anybody's capable of doing it. But in my mind, this is something we kind of talk about at the schools, and that, the whole mistake management is a thing I picked up from Hayward, and we use this. It's don't let your one mistake compound you into other mistakes. Forget about it and move on. Manage it. Don't try to make up for the mistake you just had. Just continue on and let that be your one mistake if that's going to happen. You know what I mean? So you're trying to reduce the amount of mistakes you make on course, and that's going to equal the faster time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And for some reason, I think of golf. I used to golf a lot. That if you hit in the rough, don't try to be the hero. Accept that, okay, there's an extra stroke. And I think the same thing in autocross. I feel like some people plow into something and they don't catch it, and then they make a second mistake because of the first one, or they try to overdo that. Whereas it's for me, I'm like, I'm getting off the line. Okay, I've got to quickly get back on line because otherwise I'm going to be late on this one and the next feature. So I guess that's where, like you said, compounding. I want to make that mistake be one and done, and back to the right line is what I always think of it, whereas you phrased it a little bit different. I'm just always thinking, let's not drag this error and keep going too fast into the next element and the next element.
Right. I mean, if you wanted to make it really, think about a slalom. If you get behind on one cone, suck it up, fix it right then and there, and don't be behind on the rest of them.
Yeah, I like what Jinx said, if I can get this kind of right. He goes, the first cone in the slalom is the only chance you have to be early.
That's right, yeah.
So you can only late apex that one, because otherwise you're usually going to keep adding speed. And I think even there, here locally, when I did so well at that last the event you were at, I felt like I was off the cones way more than I wanted to be. It was just too much inputting. It's like, you over-input. You should have started turning the other direction sooner already.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing when we're teaching the school that just blows the student's mind, is how soon you can start turning. And I tell them once again, it's a function of weight transfer. You've got to turn the steering wheel soon because the car has to roll over, the tire has to grip, then the car is going to turn direction.
Yeah, I'm going to phrase...
So you do that at the cone, you already passed it before the car turns.
Yeah, as you said that, when people say roll over, I wonder how many people realize the car is simply leaning over. It has to go from normal to all of a sudden it's going to lean over, let's say, to the right side to make a left-hand turn. And everybody says roll over. And when you first said that, I'm thinking tires. Of course, ST tires used to. They would roll over. They would get on the side.
Right,
So interesting. Yes, it takes time for a car to sit. And I love to say when Barry Ott co-drove with me after getting on a C-Mod, he hopped in the D-Stock Integra. Because he expected everything to happen right away, he made micro inputs. It was funny that I picked up and I was like, he thinks that if he moves the wheel 2 inches, it's going to set. But no, it takes 15, 20, 30 feet at speed or 40 feet for that to take effect, for the car to lean over and the car to start turning. And big point, I don't know if you guys do this when you're walking, but when I'm walking course, I head into slalom like, okay, here I'm already turning left again. And it probably is 30 or 40 feet before that cone. Just trying to be realistic of what will happen, of how soon you have to turn that wheel. So anybody listening, you may want to think about that. When we're walking course, I'm thinking, okay, I'm already turning left here, and I'm 40 feet from that cone or whatever it is. I really do think about that as I even walk course.
Yeah, depending on how stiff the car is, everything, you really have to lead a car. Like a bone stock Indy Miata, just so much body roll. You really have to get that car leaned over early so that you can get the car to take the set, so you can carve the arc you actually want to carve.
And we could say weight, so we have to get that weight transfer. We have to start it soon because it takes so long for it to roll over, lean, for the weight to get over there to that tire or those tires.
Right. Yep.
I like it. We're breaking new ground in my mind anyway.
Yeah, then like I said, you can talk about what do you learn from teaching in schools and like that. And there's lots of things, but when I started teaching in Starling School, it really made me focus on what is the weight transfer doing? What am I doing with the car? You don't want to, when it comes to applying the brakes, you can't shock the front end. You can't throw the weight onto the front end. You have to place it there. So the way you apply the brake, you can squeeze it quickly, but the faster you hit that brake, the quicker you're trying to put all the weight onto the front. And at some point, you're going to shock those tires. So you have to be able to place it there quickly, but at the same time, you have to place it there. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. Yet I bet I shock the tires more than ideal. So I probably go over the limit in the braking categories, I bet. Which, once again, like you said, tight lines, I believe they make you fast. You can be in the top probably 10% or 20%. I don't know. Maybe trophy-wise, if you can drive tight lines at or over the limit. I think if anything, I err, and I'm sure everybody does, it's kind of quick, if they err by going over micro little bits here and there all throughout runs.
Right. Yeah, I think, and I think once you get to a level of competitiveness, that's kind of natural. We're all going to be pressing because we're competitive. We want to go. But it's that whole function of you got to ride that fine line, right up to 100%, maybe a little bit over, but I don't know. Is running 99% faster? No. I think you're right. I think right over that edge might be a little bit quicker.
At least getting there. That's what I heard somebody else saying about instructing. It's so much easier to instruct somebody that goes over the limit to pull back instead of the people that don't get to the limit of grip, to coach them up to that.
Absolutely. You really have to be a cheerleader when someone's when they're underdriving. And it's fun to do that to an extent, but it can also be kind of frustrating because you got to get them. There's usually the reason that you're having that person is there's a fear. And you got to figure out what that is, and you've got to get them past that. So whether it's a fear of spinning the car or whatever, you got to push them past that to kind of break through to the point where they'll start being aggressive with the car. So yeah, I have students that I tell them, I'm like, if you don't spin your car by the time you leave here today, we haven't taught you well enough. We need to get you to the point where you're going to push past your limit. And when they do, they usually start laughing. I'm like, yeah, see, nothing happened. We might have hit a few cones. Whoop-de-doo. It's all good. Nothing bad happened. Now let's go out and let's try it again, and let's try to get close to where you were without going over the edge this time. And it's, seeing them all of a sudden push forward is awesome. But yeah, usually if you can get someone to dial back, it's just dialing back that aggression. And yeah, usually it's easier to get that one done.
And how would you identify
so to speak,
the people who are really aggressive? Are they plowing into turns? Are they spinning the car already? In my mind, maybe everybody plows a little bit. I just don't. I haven't coached enough to know what are the telltale signs of somebody who's aggressive.
You get all sorts. You get the guys that are aggressive, or the guys and gals that are aggressive everywhere, where they'll plow into the corner and they'll oversteer out. They're just very digital. They're just aggressive and digital. You'll get people who are just aggressive on entry because they're trying to drive the car into the corner real hard. But then they come out slow because they've pushed into the corner. Then you get people going into the corner just fine, but they've got a car with power, so they just whomp on the throttle, and then all of a sudden, the rear end's everywhere. Generally, though, I would say a majority of the people that are aggressive are going to be, you're trying to fix the entry. And to fix the entry, you've got to get them to find the exit. Because they're usually focused on the beginning of the corner. They're not focused on the exit of the corner, so that they know they got to slow down.
So to cover this some more, and this is probably something I mean, all of us, I think, need to keep learning. I trail brake so much. Today I was like, man, maybe you're not actually focused enough on the exit. Yet on this podcast, over and over, the guests have been like, I focus on the exit because exit speed is so important. So with these people, are they not picking their head up to see the exit and or never even thinking about planning to come out fast? Yeah,
in the oval, I think you talk to anybody and it's always our problem. We're not looking far enough ahead. So it's not only are we not looking far enough ahead, but sometimes we don't know where to put our eyes. And that's what we kind of coach is, we've got an oval and we have 3 cones on each side of the oval. And I'll ask the student, where are you putting your eyes? And I'll point at the 3 cones. I'm like, which one of these are you looking at? And invariably, they'll either say the first cone or maybe the second, or they're looking at the first cone. They think they should be looking at the second. I'm like, no, you're supposed to be looking at the third. Because the exit's going to tell you when to brake. Because it's that old question, you'll walk the course or you'll be helping someone new, and they go, where should I brake?
Yeah.
And you tell them, I don't know. you have a different car. I don't even know where I'm going to brake until I run the course, because my butt is going to tell me by looking at that exit cone. Because if I know I have to get on the backside of that exit cone, that tells
right
me
next to
there's
it.
only so much speed I can go through this corner to get there. And that cone, if I can spot that cone's going to tell me that's when I need to slow down.
And I was coaching somebody at a local event years ago. I said, look over there. And she looked over there and promptly never looked anywhere else. So we went really deep. So when I tell people to look ahead, I will turn my head and look across and see that, and then scan back to my imaginary place in the middle and scan back and forth.
Oh, right. And we really focus on looking ahead and finding the exit cone, because we need to get their eyes there so they know when to brake. I'm a scanner. I'll scan back and forth myself.
I just want to, after seeing that happen, I was like, oh, I've got to tell you that you actually have to look back and see where you're going in between there and there. Like, can you cut distance? That was the biggest thing. I'm going over there. How tightly can I get there to still be on the line to be backsighting it or whatever I want to do? So if you just stare at it, you may not, if it's a big enough turn, maybe it's easier. You may not have the peripheral vision to have a clue how deep you're going. It was the case in this case. I'm like, we went so deep. I'm like, where are you going? Like, well, you told me to look at the cone. I did. I'm like, oh, I want you to move your eyes back and forth the whole time.
Well, and it's like you said, you hit on it. It's a peripheral thing. You're using that cone to tell you when to brake. So it's not just look at the cone, because anybody can just look at the cone. It's what's that cone telling you, and yeah, you've got to use your peripheral to spot from the apex to the exit.
Yep. And that's
or scan back and forth if the corner's too big to use just your peripheral vision.
Yeah, that's where
to get that done.
Teaching the Evo school, Junior was going, oh, look at the last slalom cone. So during a practice day, I could pull that off. Still now, when I get back to slaloms, the first time through, I forget. But it's amazing that peripheral vision really does work, that I can go through slaloms pretty quick and not be looking at each cone, which is my natural, let's look at it, how close am I to it, which I don't think it's the end of the world to do that, to scan back and forth. But I was amazed that I could look at that last cone and the peripheral in between there could figure out what to do. I mean, I was totally amazed.
Right.
It's something just to at least experiment with for people.
Yeah, and it's something I still work on. The way I approach a slalom now is I break it, like I tell a student, I break it down to the simplest element. What is a slalom? It's a line. So what I'm trying to see is the line and all the cones in that line. And then as I cross that line, that's when I begin my turn back.
And that reminds me, somebody had that video showing how soon people turn. Like, I bet you're turning even before that, once again, just to have the car set, well, depending on what kind of car.
Yeah, and there's a hand trick that we talk about where, say you go around the left side of the first cone. You're turning left. As your right hand crosses the line of the slalom, you start turning the other direction.
Yeah, you better be.
And it's very basic. And it needs tuning for each car and stuff like that. But it's going to get you within 90% of the noise. It's going to get you close enough that it's going to get you turning early like you should be, as long as you backside the very first cone.
Yeah.
The first cone obviously is, if you can't get that cone backside the slalom, you're already too late.
Yeah, no kidding. And that's a place where compounding mistake. If I know I didn't get into or close enough to that first cone to be on the correct line to have the flattest arc or straightest line, I therefore know I better slow down and try to get to the next cone to backside it. So that's a case where if I recognize the first mistake, I'm going to slow more than I would usually have to backside the next cone somewhat.
Yeah, fix your mistake as soon as possible so it doesn't continue.
Because otherwise it's too easy to carry that speed in the second or third cone, then you really have an issue that's half a second later. Okay, that really slowed me down.
Yeah, and then you can't power out of the slalom.
Yep, and most times that's the case. Oh, I have to note, when looking ahead, some courses are so busy in that at this Packwood Pro Solo, they had a Chicago box. So basically a really tight 3-cone slalom. And then we're coming out and headed back around into like another 90 or almost a 180. It was so hard that most of the time I could not turn my head to see back over. Actually, yeah, it was about 180 when you looked at the second gate over there. So sometimes some of these courses are incredibly busy, and it's so hard to actually do that. Even when I feel experienced, but I guess it's the fear level of I might hit these cones. There's 3 cones really close here. So at times we may say look ahead. At times it comes into I got to pre-program what the heck I'm going to do up here.
Right, yeah, and that's the thing is that's where being a course designer is hard, but that's getting the visuals right is always something I'm always trying to work on. It's like, how do I make sure that the key cones, the cones that matter, aren't muddied up by surrounding cones, so that you can easily locate them and move on to the next section. And that's Roger Johnson's book is invaluable in talking about that kind of stuff. And I always try, anybody that's a new designer for our region, I'm always preaching, go read that online manual. Look it over. It's such a good read.
And for me, being an understudy of John Ames, I think of very much Pro Solo. The less cones, the better. Yet then I also think for beginners, let's have some more things that make it easier, or if I make them all into gates, then we can chalk it. But otherwise, less is more.
And I don't think you even need, less is always my goal. But yeah, for local events, I usually throw up a few more like outside point cones, like pointer walls.
Yep.
And that kind of thing. And if it's the interior of a course, if it's kind of, on the inside of the rest of the course, then I might throw up a few more walls just to make sure there's no mistake of going, because if it's on the outside of the course, sometimes I'll just do inside cones. I won't even put anything outside except for maybe a pointer wall. Because why? It doesn't need to be there. And you can make the course technical without adding a bunch of stuff on the outside. You don't have to use a ton of cones to have a technical course.
And tell me, do you teach or ever tell people, or you yourself look to the outside cones?
Well, my last course that I did, the exit to one of the corners, to get set up properly for the next section, you had to find the outside cone on the exit.
To be next to it?
Yep.
Okay.
The inside cone was kind of a sucker cone. So yeah, it depends on the course layout and where you need to put the car, because it's all about, your eyes are going to tell you where to drive to. So, sometimes, you have to find an outside cone because that's where you need to be.
That's limiting you basically to get set up or get to the next element. I can now think, after I asked that, I was like, oh yeah, several nationals courses, I feel like in the top corners, you do a 90 and you want to get as wide as possible to get out to get into a slalom or something, or some offsets. That's the one place I feel like over and over again, or the national courses, they seem to do that.
Yeah, and the entry is one thing. It's the exit, to me, that really, you've got to be on your point with the exit. The entry is where you enter. You want to enter at a certain spot, but no matter where you enter, you want to make sure that you're exiting where you need to be. So yeah, for me, it's if I have to be on the outside for the exit or the inside for the exit to set up for the next section, that's the big question. Like, where do I have to position the car? Do I have to backside the cone? Which typically you do. It's amazing how often we say that word in autocross. In fact, it's when I did Novice Walk that they started playing autocross walk bingo with John Hunter, using terms such as backside and just a bunch of different. You're looking ahead in your typical autocross phrases. But it's true. It's amazing how often you need to backside a cone to properly drive a course.
Okay, and I'm writing down a little note for FAQ of all the different terms, like backside. So
that's the thing, is when we're teaching in school and stuff like that, it's the thing with teaching is, now I want to talk to you about this. Listen to all the different people you talked to. It really kind of stood out to me how many people that really excel at the sport are left-brained, as I would put it. Engineers, that kind of thing. Data-driven, analytical, that kind of thing. Where I'm more of a right brain. I see in pictures. And so when we're dealing with a student, I'm always trying to pick out, what's the thinking process of this person? Do I want to paint them a picture, or do we want to talk, data points and facts and stuff like that, and trying to relate to the person. But yeah, no, sorry, I was reminded about that it was really interesting how many people seem to have a career in a field that would be, very data driven.
And I've talked about that, like the buckets people come from, even not only they fall into, But that's huge. Like so many people in software or engineering. And it's so funny. I listened to a podcast today that was totally covering when you're talking to somebody, if I'm high energy and you're high energy, then we can just be normal. But if you're different than me, if I want to have a better conversation, I need to approach you more your style, even with eye contact and stuff. So that's very fascinating. That does apply to how you should talk to students. And that's why I think different people will relate to different people in this podcast. It all comes to, hey, I can relate to him better, or I can relate to her better. And just realize it's all those different points of our nature, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, it's imperative to know that as a teacher. As someone who's trying to teach other people, how do I relate to this person? That's the other reason that we don't, when you do the school, you don't have the same instructor the entire day. We get you in, I mean, you're going to have at least 3 different people, hopefully, unless we only have 2 instructors, but you're going to get, as many different instructors as we can get you with, because I'm going to say something some way, and I'm going to try to find out the best way to say it to you, having met you and figured out, hopefully what you're going to relate to. But maybe Tom says it better than I do, or not necessarily better, but different enough, and it resonates with you. Like for me, Andy Hall is my go-to guy for advice. When I'm like at nationals, he's the one I want watch me run the course. He's the one I want giving me some feedback, because it's how he says it to me that just works, and it just resonates so that it sticks better than if someone were to say almost sometimes the same thing, just maybe in different words.
And that's so amazing to think. I don't know how often I talk to somebody to get advice, whereas I would follow David Fouth and John Ames and Tennell around. So for me to learn, I'd be like, okay, this is the line to drive. And it wasn't really, I wasn't riding with people. Still, I can just watch cars on course, that when I actually am good enough to do that and pay attention, I can notice things. So it's so interesting where if you listen to one of us and you try to do our technique, you may not learn that way. And the best parenting advice, which I need to always keep working on, John Ames said, is know how your kids learn best. And I'm so often going, here, watch me. That's me. If I watch somebody do something, I know for when it's possible, and hopefully I can pick up on it. But somebody else may have to actually do it themselves, or watch or ride along. Like you said, the right seat feels so much faster. That might give you the confidence to attack more. Yes,
some people you can tell, okay, go out and do this, and they can go out and do that. They can learn from, just describing to them. Some people need to see it. Some people need to do it. And it's figuring out the best process. Like with Andy, it's more when I come in, he'll come up to me and go, okay, the 5th corner, I need a little bit more, I'll throw it a little earlier, just little things that he picks up on. Or he might come up to me and go, are you having fun? That's honestly one of the best things he ever did for me is the year I got second in STS. Getting ready to walk the course, I didn't like the course, and it was getting to me. And I don't know why I didn't like it, but I didn't like it. And I was in 4th, I think, going into day 2, and I was trying to hype myself up. I'm going to do well, blah blah. And I ran into him and Ann Hollis. They were waiting for Andy, and they were going to do a walk. And I chatted with them for a little bit, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go for my walk now. And I told Andy, I'm not a fan of the course or anything like that. And as I'm walking away, Andy goes, hey, John. I turn around and I say, hey, what's up? He's like, remember, have fun. And it's the way he said it, it was just like, oh, yeah. Kind of like Junior said in the podcast, we're here to have fun. We're driving around a lot with forever cones. This is about fun. So I walked the course, and I still didn't love it, but I was like, okay, I understand the course. I get it. And when I drove it, it drove awesome. I loved it. And I laid down the fastest street tire time of any street-tired car at Nationals. And it was just because he took that weight off of me just with those easy, simple words. He saw that I was waiting, and he knew what to say to me to get that weight off. So
yeah,
I think it's
just the attitude,
like you said,
is huge.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Like, okay, you talk to Whitener. David has to amp himself up. he needs to go, he needs to get himself kind of jacked up, ready to go for a run. I have to calm myself down. I'm so competitive. I have to crack a joke, smile, laugh, that kind of stuff, just to take away that edge so that I can drive at my best. Otherwise, I'll drive maybe tense. You know what I mean? So I drive at my best when I'm almost falling asleep or laughing, just completely relaxed. If I go in super competitive, jacked up, I'm not going to drive well at all.
Yeah, it's something else for people to take note for themselves is, how are you feeling in runs? Like, I finally have a notebook in the car again, and I write little things down and tire pressures and what I'm thinking of. Oh, did this, car felt great. Hey, what am I feeling today? Am I relaxed? Am I not? Am I amped up? And I remember David Whitener saying, sometimes actually I need a different word. And it's not always pumped up and get crazy, but for me also, I feel like when I'm relaxed, it's good. Although on second days of nationals at times when I've not done as well, I probably need to be more amped up. Something didn't equate. I took the edge off. I drove at 95%, but I didn't realize it till afterwards. So that's where I think, once again, having co-drivers and such, or somebody watching and helping out is huge.
Right. Or is it a like the year that I ran an STU, I didn't trophy that year. And my first run, I had a cone. My second run, I had a great run, first part of the course, and I didn't remember to brake earlier because I was carrying so much more speed. And so I blew the corner and I hit more cones. So I was going in my third run with dirty. And my first run, if I remember correctly, would have had me, definitely in the trophies, if not high, fairly high up. So I knew I had the time there. I just had to put one together to stay in contention. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go out and I'm going to put in a 90% run or a 95% run. I'm going to play it safe. I came in over a second off the pace. Then I said, never again am I going to go out without trying to play it safe or trying to take, the easier way to make sure I don't make a mistake. I'm going to focus, from now on, I'm just going to focus on doing the best drive that I can instead of saying, okay, I'm going to take this much off just to make sure I have a safe run.
Yeah, I agree. You can't dial it back very much without it being a second.
Yeah, and if you're in the lead on day one, which I've been there with you, going to day two, and all you're thinking about is like, man, don't screw this up.
Yeah.
And so maybe you start to drive a little conservative because you're worried you're going to screw it up. And so, yeah, when I won AP, my first run I hit a cone, and I came back, and I was even more like, oh man, don't do this. You had a lead on day one. You got to put this together. And I knew myself well enough at that point where I was like, okay, I've got to have a laugh. I got to take the weight off. Got to go out there, remember, have fun. And I came up to the starting line, and the guy scanning my helmet, he couldn't quite, it wasn't registering, so he asked me to lean in. Gave me the motion to lean in. So I leaned in, and he scanned me, and I looked at him, and I don't know who he is. He was an older gentleman. I'm like, do I get a kiss too? And he just gave me this look like, what? And I just started laughing. And went out there and put down a time, and it was 15, and was able to hold on to the win. So, everybody's got to find that one thing that works for them mentally. Do you amp yourself up? Do you calm yourself down? What works best for you to fit your driving style? And that might be, how do you come at it? Do you naturally overdrive, or do you naturally underdrive? And
Exactly,
which way do you need to go?
Or you've had a few runs. How are those doing? And from run to run, what do I need for this next run? Am I underdriving? Am I overdriving? And the same thing that you said, I hopefully didn't just say this, was the hero run. I used to tell myself, oh, I'm going to go get a hero run now. That has also never worked out. The take something off or go for a hero run, no longer do I ever say, oh, I need a second. I'm going to go out there and really find that second. That usually proves disastrous pretty quickly.
No, yeah, it's I like the I was thinking about this the other day. Ross Bentley said, don't let the competition get in the way of the performance. I think that's the same thing. Don't ever use the time. Don't go for a time. That's usually when you go for a hero run. You're going for the time. Go for what is the absolute best I can drive this course, and try to stay within that realm.
Yeah, and realize it may not beat everybody else, but they can't play defense on you. Mentally is the only way you actually play defense on yourself, is what I think the biggest deal is. Once you get pretty decent at this sport, it's all, can you, well, for one, get your car prepped to the right level, and then show up and drive it as well as you can drive it.
Yeah, can you stay out of your own way?
Yep.
For a lot of us, that's the biggest issue. Can we stay out of our own way mentally? Can we approach the game with the correct mental state to overcome any issues you have early, maybe early cones, that kind of thing. The whole quote unquote Iceman approach, don't let it phase you. Just go out there and knock that run out when you need it.
Yeah. Let's switch to, take us through like what you do for course walks.
Course walks. I've gotten to the point where I try to limit to 3. Generally, the first couple are going to be social walks, especially at bigger events where you're seeing people you haven't seen for a while. And when I'm doing a social walk, all I'm doing is seeing the lay of the course. Where's it going? And then I try to do one walk where I really focus on where am I looking, what is looking ahead, what is the key cone I'm trying to spot to find my exit to get around the course. And then I get through that walk, and hopefully by that time I can stop and I can just drive it in my head. If I can drive it in my head and everything lays out the way that it actually has on the pavement, I call it a day. Because I found when I would go out there and walk 8-10 times, I started dictating to myself, I'm going to do this here, and I'm going to do this here.
Too many details.
And
basically.
I would. And you might pigeonhole yourself where you're like, okay, I'm gonna, this is where the car's probably going to break, or not break, but where I'm going to break, or I'm going to do this here. And you might, but that might not be the fastest way around the course. You've already dictated to yourself what you're doing because you've walked so many times. You've played the game out in your head too well. Where I'm just trying to make sure that I know where the course goes, so that on my first run, I can let the course tell me what I'm doing around. You know what I mean?
I totally agree, because I've done that whole braking thing, and then I brake. I'm like, why did you do that?
Yeah, and it's because you told yourself you were going to. I'll probably hit the brakes here. And that's why I, gotten to the point where people are like, where are you going to brake? I'm like, I have no idea. I'm going to brake when my butt tells me to.
Yeah, especially as you get faster and faster run after run. You need to brake sooner usually. Right,
yeah. So, and because, that's the other thing about autocross is even on a similar day, that everything's changing. The temperature in the tires, the grip level of the tires. Did someone have an often, is there more sand or whatever on the driving line? Everything's constantly changing, and you're constantly adapting to those changes while trying to get your runs done in 3 runs. And that's where that seat time and the practice and getting consistent with the car and knowing what the car is going to do, or at least being within that noise, is so invaluable. I'm always so jealous of the people on the West Coast or down in Florida that run from February to November. They get so much seat time, so many events. And we typically do, Nebraska region, what we do, 7 events?
Yeah.
Maybe 6 before nationals. So that's where, teaching is really big. It's even more seat time because I get to travel around and go to different events than even just instructing and riding with the students. It's still seat time. It's still practicing the sport. So.
Yeah, exactly. Even right seat, left seat, you're still seeing experiences and getting the feel, I think, is a big deal. But something I want to point out that you just said is a kind of a highlight to me is every run is different. So if I'm out there on a practice day and I'm going run after run after run, my tires are getting hot and they're pretty much staying there. Whereas the grip level changes every run at Nationals or any big event because you have more time between, but your tires get to warm up some. Or especially in colder days, maybe they were finally warm by the third run, but maybe you have less power. I remember John Ames saying those RX-7s when they were new. How the first run you had all this power because you had a cold engine, but your tires had no grip. By the end,
right.
He said it was a totally different car. You had less power and all this grip. So that's another reason not to pre-program too much stuff run to run. It's where am I at? Where am I going? Am I sticking? Is it sticking here? Do I need to slow down a little bit to get on the right line? That really it's 3 different runs. Or 4 or 5 different runs.
And that's where, the people who make a lot of changes to the car suspension-wise between every run, it just, I've always been the type that if there's going to be a change to the car, it needs to be between the first and second. I need nothing to change, by our own hand between the second and third run. I want to go on third run with knowing as close as I possibly can what I have underneath me, I don't want to go out there going, okay, we just changed the compression in the rear, so it should rotate more at this corner. I don't want to know should. I want to know what it's doing, and I'll just drive to what it's giving me. Hopefully by that time we have the car well enough set up that we don't have to make changes. But yeah, I've always been more of a, take the car and drive what you're given at the event. Because there's enough of potential to make a mistake just in the driving to add a bunch of changes to the way the car is turning without knowing exactly what those changes do. They are introducing a lot more chance to make more mistakes.
Yeah, unless it's a confidence builder.
If you've done enough seat time, enough practice where you know exactly what those changes will do, then yeah, it makes sense. But when it's I think we can add 2 clicks of rebound, that might, I don't want to guess. I want to go out there knowing that do the best that I can what that car's going to do so that I can just drive what I know that I have.
And I've always at least hoped that those changes can't make that much of a difference since I don't usually make them. And yet I know people believe it's going to make a ton of difference. But once again, it's been pointed out before, like you just said, the tires are getting up to temp. Between run to run, they're changing each time, so the car is going to change anyway somewhat. Maybe it will be grippy without tweaking the shock. So I'm of the mindset that, hey, that can't make that big of a difference. Your car, if you've been competitive, you should be competitive. And maybe if you're a 10th off and you're like, I'm going to change that, turn that knob just a little bit, I just don't have the confidence or faith that that's really going to help me.
Right, and throw another thing at you, because McCabe and I always talked about this, do Hoosiers fall off in grip when they get really, really hot? A lot of people tell you they don't. And talking with Vermalm, the overall grip usually doesn't diminish. Usually stays at the ultimate grip is usually the same as the tire gets extremely hot. I think what happens though is the feel of the tire changes. The elasticity of the tire changes, so it might not be as crisp. There might be a little bit more, as the tire is hotter and more elastic, you might be feeling, it might be just that little bit of extra feel of it moving underneath you, where you're thinking, okay, the tire has lost some grip. The grip is there. It just, you have to set it better, or it takes a little bit more time to set. At least that's what we're kind of coming to a conclusion with, because, I've always said that, we want to start cooling off the RCOMs, and that's what Ron and I've started doing. We started watering the tires early because we like the crispness, and once we get them up to temp where we're getting to the ultimate G's that they can handle, we want to keep them as crisp as possible while being there.
That's very interesting. And once again, if you're relying on feel, or for me, a lot of times it's trying to hear the different tires, as they get hot, if that changes, you're going to have to either be smoother or more meticulous, something, which reminds me back when I was driving on Hoosiers, I swear that even when they start showing cords, you could still be really fast. You just had to be really smooth. And it was a challenge. Anytime that would happen, I'm like, okay, now I'm going to try to be really smooth. Nobody stopped me from driving on these. I'm just going to be really smooth and see if I can still pull this off.
Well, and honestly, that should be the game. Well, we should always try to be really smooth. But yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
And I've said on this podcast, at times people thought I was smooth on Hoosiers. After watching what people are doing on Toyos, I was like, I've got to be more aggressive. So at times I've told myself to be more aggressive and not to even think smooth thoughts, honestly, which seems so
well,
weird.
You know, that's what's funny is I've had runs where I come back and someone's like, "Oh man, you look so smooth out there," and I'm like, "I'm all asses and elbows in this thing." And my point with that would be, I don't know if you've ever seen the video of Tom O'Gorman driving the 914, the year when the championship.
Yep.
The in-car video, you're looking at it like, how is that smooth? I mean, the wheels moving like crazy. I mean, the inside the car, it's a hectic show. Outside the car, looks smooth. So there's keeping the car smooth but doesn't necessarily mean you're not giving it inputs.
Yeah, they're making the inputs to keep it from being out of control or too loose, I swear.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
I keep
when you
watching
can get
these
to that
fast
level,
guys.
that's when you're driving.
Yeah, especially like I felt that local event you were at. I kept being pissed because I was having to catch the car. Well, really, I was right at the limit of grip several times and having to open the wheel to catch it, which was a good thing, meaning I was at the limit. Where when I got to Packwood and didn't do well, I was like, I guess I'm just not at the limit enough. Like, it's just not, I'm not doing something right here. So I guarantee it doesn't look smooth when people catch the car like Robert Thorne. You watch his videos. The Big Bad Wolf, he had to open that wheel quickly to catch it.
Yep. Yeah, and I would imagine, especially in the Civic, you know, if you have to catch the rear of the car, it means you're rotating it, which means you're getting through that corner faster.
Yeah.
Because you know the nose is already pointing to where you want to go.
And that's where I have that wrong thought. Like I kept complaining. I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to slow down and not have that happen on these. It seemed like the entry of one of those sweepers and the exit of the finish one. But in reality, yes, it was fine. Because I wasn't checking times or whatever to see how well I was doing. But it was okay. Yet I kept berating myself. So that's another thing, is realize that what may seem like out of control to someone may actually be as fast as you can go through that turn, because what you just said is so key. That having a car rotate, I've always heard, is faster because I can keep the wheel straighter, yet the car rotated to get through the turn. Less distance and everything else all combines for the ultimate.
Right. Yep. How can you turn the car without using the steering wheel?
Yep. And in front-wheel drive, you hopefully lift. And you guys in rear-wheel drive, you can either... Do you ever think... Are you rotating with the right foot with power very often?
You try to. And that's when you got that much power, that's when it becomes an interesting game. But yeah, you always finish the corner with a little bit. Yeah, I mean, obviously you don't want to go, full WRC, 45-degree slip angle. But what you're trying to do is get on the power early enough in a way that's not going to create push, but that's going to, help you finish that corner so you can, like Robert does in the S2000, he's unwinding the wheel early and he's powering out of the corner, because the earlier you can put the power down, the faster you're going to be. So if you can use that power to help you get out of the corner, I'd imagine that would be the fastest way out.
Yeah, and that's where I feel like Daniel, what he won C Street last year, I think he was talking about McKelvey, yes, in the middle of the turn getting the car to rotate. I swear Ross Bentley, it may have been on the podcast when I saw him live, was talking about that. Can you get it to rotate in the middle of the turn, or I guess I should say wherever the turn's going to be the tightest, if it's not just a big smooth arc, can you get it to rotate there?
Yeah, I actually taught a school with him in Houston just a couple of weeks ago and got to drive his car. And we talked setup theory. And the way he has his car set up is it's designed to rotate on entry to a corner and have slight push on exit.
So he can get on the throttle early, because if anything, it's going to push.
And it's never going to bite him, because it's never going to rotate and step away from him. He just has to live through a little bit of push, but he can rotate the car, kind of like you do with the Civic. You come in the corner, you can trail brake it in, you can rotate to get that car to start that rotation and get most of the turning done, and then when it gets back on power, just like you do, it comes out of the corner.
Yeah, nice and easy.
So, I mean, when you think about it, it's kind of a front-wheel drive setup in a rear-wheel drive car.
Which is like Matthew Braun, honestly. He sets those things up that he can just, he can get his right foot as far into that Corvette as he wants to, and it's still safe.
Yeah, and it's as someone who enjoys oversteer and I like that kind of driving style better, it doesn't mean it's faster, but it's something that it feels more natural and it's enjoyable. But I'm stepping back from that and going, okay, well, he's got his car set up that way. I've driven it now. Then I've driven two other NDs that are set for C Street. And I'm just going back and forth with, okay, how is each car set up and which is actually faster? You know, you need to find a car that works for your driving style, but at the same time, sometimes you have to tweak your driving style to match what is truly faster. Because sometimes data will show you, you know, from my understanding, and because I haven't used data a ton, I got to use it with McKelvey while we were down there, that even if it feels better in a corner, doesn't mean it's the faster way through the corner.
Exactly, yeah. What I might like might not be as good as what you pull off.
Right. It might be faster to go through the corner in a way that's a little bit uncomfortable for you. It just works out that it's quicker. And that's where we talked about, like, Matt has a style and I have a style. You know, if we could bounce back and forth between each other's styles, probably end up being faster for both of us.
What'd you find with Daniel? Could you drive his car, or you did not prefer that?
You can drive it. It's you just have to know what the car's going to do. And I mean, he made a quick adjustment because he asked me if I thought it was understeering too much. And I'm like, well, it's your car. I don't know. Because I drove it first heat, he drove it third heat.
Yeah.
And so it was, you know, what do you think? I'm like, well, I don't know. You told me you like your car set up with a little bit of understeer. And so I just drove through it.
And you noticed it?
Yeah, totally.
Did you notice the rotation on entry?
Oh, yeah. And I love that about his car. It was exactly the way he described it. You come off throttle or use the brake, and you can get the car to rotate, and then you just kind of catch it with the throttle just like you would, you know, back when I was driving Bubba in STS. But in some corner sweepers and such, there would be just that hint of understeer. It had the propensity to raise its ugly head a little bit quicker than normal. And so when he ran it, he actually made a quick adjustment to the rear because he thought, it was pushing just a little bit too much. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, it's a small adjustment. It's a small adjustment.
He's just hoping that makes it a little bit quicker coming out of the turn. Right,
and it's the thing that I enjoyed is I got to see a different style. I got to see his style of setup, and then I got to see another car style of setup. You know, and you know, I don't have direct data, you know, because it's, you know, 2 different events, 2 different days, 2 different surfaces, 2 different temperatures, humidity, all that stuff. But I'm a firm believer that one setup is not always the fastest setup. You can have 2 slightly different setups, and they could both be equally as fast. It's just how do you attack as a driver.
And how comfy are you with the setup? That's another thing. Some people probably could hop in both cars if they drove them long enough and drive them equally as well. I would bet there's not a ton of difference because, once again, we're always making some kind of mistakes or something we could do a little bit better.
Right. But the thing I liked about it is I'm able to take his philosophy now and why he set his car up. I understand the concept behind it. And so I will probably lean towards his style, but maybe not as far. And who knows, once I get the car put together, you know, get the shocks on the car and everything like that, it might end up handling a lot like his car. I don't know. I got to figure out, you know, and that's why Data's I have every intention of buying Data, whether I drive by myself or with a co-driver, because I just want to be able to look at various runs. I'll set the car up. I'll change the setup in the car, you know, through the year, hopefully early in the year, to see what is the best setup for Lincoln, you know, for my driving style, what produces the best numbers. And then go from there, whether that's a setup like his or maybe more towards the middle or maybe a little looser, I don't know. But hit the fundamental thought process that he has for why he sets his car up, I can't disagree with. Because, you know, last thing you do is waste time with the tail lagging out because it's set up too loose.
Yeah,
rather have just that slight bit of push.
Even in a Civic, I say the same thing. I don't want to have to catch the car a lot. I really don't, because I'm afraid one time it's going to be too much and it's going to blow the whole run because of that.
Yeah.
So take us next into what you do in between runs. You mentioned no data per se. Video, do you look at that? What's your mental? Do you sit there in the car and think through things? What are you doing between runs?
Wondering why I hit that cone. No, no, I'm trying to get to the point where I spend maybe a little bit more time in the car going over to the run. The big thing that I try to focus on is, okay, you know, obviously I made mistakes, because you make a mistake every run, most of the time multiple, at least when we're talking about myself. So you try to pick, okay, what's the low-hanging fruit? What can I fix? What's 1-2 things that I can fix? If it's a big one, I go and fix the big one. If they're 2 small ones, maybe I go out and try to fix the 2 small ones. But it's in between runs, it's get out of the car, make sure we're ready to go. And with CSP car, I mean, it was, not a lot of time to sit and think, because we were constantly trying to get OPR off the tires, making sure the tires are the correct heat, and just making sure that the next driver is ready to go. But usually the taking the OPR off the tires is very time consuming. So you really didn't have a lot of time to think while you're doing that. It was usually while Matt was out on course, I was watching his run and also thinking about, okay, what do I need to fix on my next run while he's running? And also taking in what he's doing and saying, okay, maybe I see him do something slightly different on course and go, okay, what was that?
Because you're walking over and
trying to
watching
give him feedback.
Him between runs, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Always watching the co-driver to see, to give them feedback from, what you're seeing. Because sometimes your perception, what's going on outside the car, is different than what people are seeing inside, or vice versa. So always trying to watch it go, he comes back, how'd your run go? This is what I saw. And he's like, yeah, I made a mistake there. Okay. And that's where you kind of help each other go, okay, we agree that this area is something we can fix. Now go fix that one on your next run. So I'm a big proponent of having someone, watching from the sidelines to not only, because a lot of times you'll get back from the run and, at least for myself, I won't remember the whole run just because I'm so trying to lock in and focused on the immediacy of now that I don't store that data, and I have to sit there for a second and let it all come back. So if you have a co-driver, it'll be like, okay, this section here, you went a little wide. Oh, yeah. You're right, I did. I need to focus on getting my exit correct.
I've been trying to get back to that because I'm the same thing. Used to remembered everything right away. And now I'm like, oh, wait, something happened during that run. Especially if I'm taking somebody on a ride with me. I'm like, oh, what was that? Or even if I'm coaching them, it's like, oh, there was something over there. Oh, it was this. I think that is so important. I used to always do that. And it's a routine I want to get back into. Hey, I'm going to sit in the car for 30 seconds and go back through that. Mentally go through that run
right.
And go, oh, it was that and that. Those 2 things I'm going to pay attention to. And like we said before, you can't drive at 9/10 or 99%. I just say pay attention to that cone or get better set up for that area. So maybe I'm trying to give that cone a little more distance if I actually hit one. Otherwise, it's, what else can I attack?
Yeah, and it's you can't, you got to, the whole idea is kind of set that in your head before you run, so it's not a conscious, hopefully. It's okay, that's the game plan, now let's go execute it, and you just go and you execute. Because that's the thing is, it's why people flip their rearview mirrors up or turn them away so they can't look in the rearview mirror. You can't take your mind off of the immediacy, the focus that you need right now, what is ahead of you. You can't be thinking, okay, 3 turns from now, I got to not hit that cone this time.
No kidding.
You got to be focused on the now, and hopefully you have that game plan built in by the time you leave for the starting line.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Get it to your subconscious and kind of forget about it and go drive again.
Right.
That's
right.
the drive. So
that's the nice thing. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just bringing you back to the between runs. Anything else since I interjected there?
No, like I said, in CSP there was just a lot of DOPRing, and like I said, just discussing how we're going to attack the next run, and damn, what did Billy just run? Okay, now forget that time.
So do you check times between runs? Do you check your own? Do you check for cones? Anything else or no?
I do, only because I want to know. The reason I do it is I kind of want to know, kind of like where you talked about, am I pressing hard enough? Sometimes you go out there and you think, okay, I'm driving, I'm aggressive, and if your times are off, it tells you, okay, there's something I'm not doing, and it really makes me go back and focus. Okay, where is it? What am I not doing? If I'm driving a perfect line, if I can't complain about where I'm putting the car, that means I'm not driving with enough aggression.
Yeah, unless you're some big mistakes. Yeah, you're not
Right.
at the limit. You're not doing some things obviously up to the limit.
Yeah. So when I come back and I go, okay, that felt like a pretty good run. Some small mistakes. What's the time? And I like to know the time. And actually, that's funny enough. That's how I got had talked McCabe into letting me be second driver. Is I want to say, was that my third year in the car? I think it was. I asked him before the season began. I was saying, listen, and I meant just local events. I was like, can I be second driver so that you can go out and lay a time down, and that I constantly have that time in front of me, so I can learn to ignore it or use it appropriately, and I don't try to chase that time. And Spring Nationals came up, and he registered as first driver. I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool of him to let me do Spring Nationals as second driver. And then, we did the local events, and then Mid-Dips came up, and he registered for first driver again. I was like, wow, okay, cool. And the Nationals came up, and I was like, well, surely I'm back to first driver. And he registered as first driver. I was like, oh, wow, I get to go second driver at Nationals. And, we're standing on the stage, and I had won, and we're standing on the stage, and he leans over and goes, I'm second driver again next year, right? It's like, uh-huh.
I probably should have switched it up some of those years and been first driver. I should have done something to throw a little kink in it. And that's actually, back in the Integra days, I swear the gap between the second to first was quicker than first to second. For whatever reason, we'd have the big classes and things would get broken up. And I'd be thinking about it, I'm like, man, why are we waiting so long? The tires are getting cold. I want them to be warm in the rear, really, really warm. So it's so crazy that you never do know, once again, depending on the weather, but also what car you're in and how they're going to break it up.
Right, and then, what number are you? We're 27. So, the way the class shakes up, the way the rest of the class runs with you, sometimes there's an even break, sometimes it's close to their second driver, he gets warmer tires. Sometimes it's closer to the first driver, they get warmer tires. Or maybe the tires are too warm because you're close together. It's really a crapshoot. And you've got drying conditions, and you got events where it starts raining after, the year I announced for E-Mod, and it rained after the third car went out. And didn't just rain, it downpoured. So there was no getting faster. And it's just as an announcer, I was just like, oh man. Because there's just, at that point, you only talk about what's going on in the course because the results are already dictated. They're done. Yeah. So, you feel for a second driver at that point. But yeah, you don't know what the conditions are going to give you. It's a really crapshoot when it comes to, am I first driver, second driver? Typically, you want to be second driver just because you want your first run to be warm tires, so you get 3 consistent runs.
Yep.
Versus your first run warming the tire up.
Yeah, no kidding.
So,
and especially, I feel like in Packwood, each of my runs in the pro format, the first runs, the rear was too loose. And I even let them sit. Well, actually, we were in paddock. So beforehand, I had them in the sun to let them warm up a little bit. Of course, they were in the shade, so they probably cooled right back down. And note to everybody, you can't pull up on the pad. So I'm like, oh, I'll just pull up on this pad that I have in the back of my truck. And Brent comes over, luckily, and goes, hey, that's illegal. You can't do it. I'm like, oh, sorry. I was like, can I jack the car up in the air? I didn't do that. But he goes, yeah, you can do that. He says, there's nothing in a Pro Solo now that you can do to keep any heat. You can't wrap them. You can't even have tire blankets. None of that. You can only use the sun. Yep.
Did not know that.
Yeah,
because I have done 2 pros. So.
Yeah. Oh, man. So I do hope you get into those next year. Obviously, I drive across the country at times to do that.
Oh, yeah. I definitely plan on doing the pro, the Spring Nationals pro, and some more traveling this next year, as long as everything allows it. 'Cause, yeah, that's the one thing that'll be nice about being the car owner. I get to dictate that. where I go.
Yeah, I guess I drove Salil. Besides that, it's not my car. I don't have to worry about everything. That was totally different. Oh yeah, I don't have to worry about all this stuff. And I keep thinking stock class or street class might be really nice. Drive somewhere with AC and no trailer, or only trailer to certain events. Everything has its pluses and minuses for sure.
Yeah, it's street tire. The stock class has always intrigued me because I like the driving aspect of, not a lot of tuning, more focusing on just the driving, at least as much as you can. But the part that always scared me is the volatility of what is the top car to have.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I mean, look at F Street. You know, how many times has the top car changed in the last 3 years?
Hey, and
you could change it the drop of a dime.
And by the way, there's a Porsche allowed in that class.
What?
There's a Porsche in that class that we think would be pretty good for Pro Solo, but we're not dropping $100,000 to find out. It has 4 doors. Right. It just happens to be really quick from 0 to whatever.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I bought the ND alongside it being a really, really fun car is the SCCA has typically treated the Miata fairly kindly. So I felt like longevity in C Street is probably going to be there. And even if it isn't, my end goal is I want to build an STR car. But I want to spend some time in C Street just focusing on my driving. I just want to continue to develop as a driver before I start adding more knobs and things to play with on the car. But yeah, the idea of the STR car, you know, like I said, Ron Bauer's car was just kind of a holy grail. It's like, yeah, this is like one of the best little city commuter cars I've ever been in because it's just so fun. I can't imagine how much fun it is on an autocross course. So
do you have the car already?
No, actually, I had no intentions of buying the car. What happened was I happened to take an odd way home one day and drove by a Honda dealership. And let me preface this by saying that if I ever got an ND, I wanted Arctic white. It had to be white. It had to be the club. And I drove by this dealership, and there sat a brand new ND Miata at a Honda dealership. I was like, well, that's weird. And it was Arctic white. I was like, well, it's the right color. I wonder if it's a manual. So I pull in and check it out, and sure enough, it's got a 6-speed in it. And it's like, well, I wonder if it's the club. And so I went and looked at the sticker, and sure enough, it said Club Sport on it. I was like, you got to be kidding me. So I came home and told my wife, I was like, hey, you know, I've driven a couple of these at schools, but I've never really driven one on the street, you know, to see what it was like as a regular driver. And I was like, let's, you know, this Saturday, you know, we've got errands we're going to run around. Why don't we swing by, you know, towards the end of the day when the dealership will be closed and see if we can't talk them into letting me take it for a quick drive. And so we did that. And, we're out gallivanting around during the day, and wife looked at me and she goes, did you even see how much they're asking for? And I'm like, no, I didn't even bother because, you know, I don't plan on buying it. I want to drive it. And so she pulls it up, and she goes, they're only asking $22,500 for it. I'm like, what? I thought for sure they'd be asking $24,000, $25,000. She goes, I know, that's what I was thinking. And we noticed it had, you know, like 25,000 miles on it. So that was part of the reason they weren't asking as much, because it's pretty high mileage for a 1.5-year old car. So we go there and take it for a quick spin, and the wife is looking at me, she's like, man, she didn't really love the NA, my first one. She liked it, but she didn't really love it. And she's in this one, she's like, you know, I like the way this one sits. I like the interior a lot better. I like, you know, I actually really like this car too. I'm like, don't be telling me this kind of thing, because now you're going to tempt me to want to buy it. And so we drop the car off, we go home, and we're talking about it some more, and she goes, you know, I'm thinking if you can get that car for $20,500, you should buy it. It's like, you only live once, and it's the exact car you want for autocross. I mean, it'd be perfect for the class, like you said. You know, that's really cheap. And I was like, all right, well, I'll go back Monday and see what we can do. And walked away with the car for $20,300.
Twisted your arm. Such a good wife.
Right. She said we are both enablers when it comes to cars. She loves cars as well. It's not healthy for our bank account, but it's really fun. Because yeah, we've collected many cars over the years. We've gone through them and everything, but you know, quite the wide variety of different cars. You know, from the Cadillac to BRZ and the Miata, and she's got a 28 Model A Tudor that we want to build into a rat rod. We need to get going on that. She's been very patient with that. We need to get that built, but yeah, we both love cars, all sorts of different cars.
Nice.
So
all right, I've got these rapid fire questions. Any other topics that I missed though? Anything you want to bring up?
Trying to think. Let's see. No, I think we've covered a ton of it. No, yeah.
All right. Yeah,
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Yeah, we even covered slaloms without actually asking outright, so that was interesting too. Just the same advice in different words is always good for people to hear. So I wrote down here like a favorite car. Out of all these cars you've been driving, what have been some of the highlights?
Honestly, favorite autocross car is still a CSP car. They're so good at the game. But when I say that, that's no slight to the E-Mod car, because that thing is just, I tell people it's a lot all the way around. It's so much car. It's such a challenge and so fun to drive. And Ron is such an awesome person to drive with. But car wise, yeah, I'd have to stick with a CSP car.
And this is something a little bit different. Out of all these cars you've been at test or coaching people with, what has surprised you as a fun car you wouldn't have thought of that was fun, or a couple of them?
Oh, Hayward. So we were in Lincoln doing a starting line pool, and there was a young man who brought out a late 80s 300 ZX, the wedge style body. And he typically rally crosses the car. And you're watching this car, and it just has all sorts of body roll, like extreme body roll. We're going through, and we're doing the end of the day autocross, and we're kind of changing up instructors. And Hayward's like, "Have you been in the 300 yet?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "You have to go ride with him in 300, and you have to drive it." I'm like, "All right." And I'm telling you, when you take off from the line, it was like being in a boat. The front came up off the ground, just like you would in a boat. And when you hit the brakes, complete opposite. You nose over way far. I mean, we're talking, 8 inches of travel in all directions is what it seemed like. But I'm telling you right now, that car did everything well. When you put it on its nose light and you turned in, the car turned in nice and crisp. When you went to go get on the gas, it came down, hit that bump stop on the outside rear tire, and finished the corner with rotation. Just everything that you want the car to do, it did it. It just took some massive lead time to get it there. So you had to be really smooth, and it was just a hoot to drive. And Hayward and I looked at each other like, man, if we could buy this car in the name of SCCA and have it travel around with us to all the schools, it would be such a good teaching car, because it really makes you work on being smooth and looking ahead and getting the car to do what you want it to do early, and exaggerates everything so much. So yeah, that would be my surprise car.
The surprise of surprises, a late 80s 300 ZX.
Right. Yeah, I've driven, like RS America Porsche and obviously many Corvettes and many Miatas and all sorts of different cars, but that's the one that really sticks out.
Like, that blew my mind. It looked like a boat, but once done right, it's a nice boat.
Right.
All right, so anybody's car, you're in the E-Mod car, anybody else's car, or cars that you're like, oh my goodness, I'd like to try that, like you mentioned A-Mod.
Yeah, that's, the easy button, of course, and a lot of people pick it, would be Jeff's car. Honestly, and I hope this doesn't sound like a cop-out answer or anything like that, if I could drive any car right now, I would love to drive Ron Bauer's STR car. I know it's going to sound weird. Of all the cars you can choose, all the custom build and all that stuff, having ridden in it, I would love to compete in that car for a little while.
Well, it makes sense.
It might be a weird answer, but that's the one for me.
You said you wanted to head that direction, so it makes total sense. Hey, try it out before you buy all the parts and bits.
Yeah, like I've never done Packwood. I've always wanted to do Packwood. So, Ron, if you ever listen to this and you want a co-driver for Packwood sometime, call me up.
Let me
I'm
make
down.
the trip out there. Yeah, it's beautiful. Beautiful. I don't think I posted enough photos. I even took some more. I should actually, after we end this tonight, maybe put them out there on Facebook. Just a beautiful area. Although one thing I can tell you is, and it took me after a session or two to realize, oh yeah, this lot's very bumpy up and down. And we were walking the course again, and it's like, oh yeah, look, we can use the camber here, but if you aim at that cone as a normal turn, you go off camber. And then the next morning, Brian's like, oh, I forgot to tell you, but the other side's the exact opposite or something. It's like, oh, no kidding. So the people that race there all the time are probably very used to looking at that and saying, hey, in this course, I better get most of my turn done here because I have a little help with the lot surface, and then I have a detrimental slope over on that side. So things like that, which I've never thought about there before, I've done pretty well there. Sometimes it may come into play more than you think of how the lots are sloping for different turns.
That's
just at the higher levels, that may be important.
Yeah, I didn't mean to jump on you, but that's something that we talk about when we're in schools is not only where you're looking, but when you do a course walk, you look at the surface. What's it doing? Is it changing? Is there a slope? Is there an angle? Is there a camber? One of the sites I used to love, they lost it, unfortunately. They haven't been there for a while. There was a parking lot part of the Kansas City stadium where the Chiefs play, and we called it the Bowl because it was shaped like it had the one side, the middle was lower than the rest of it. It was always cambered up, and so when you autocross there, typically on the outside of the course you'd have this nice camber, and then sometimes it was oblong, so you'd have a slalom sometimes that would be as one direction you'd be off camber, one direction you'd be on camber as you went through a slalom. And so you really learned how to, how does that all affect the car and how it turns and how much you have to lead it, how much more you have to lead it, that kind of thing. So yeah, elevation. I love playing with elevation. But yeah, that's part of that thing. Reading the course, where's it going? So yeah, Packwood is definitely just from the scenery. I love the Seattle area. I'd love to go up there and race up there sometime.
Exactly. I wish I tried to tell myself, hey, you're about to drive out there for a few minutes of racing and drive back. You should stop somewhere. Heck no, I didn't stop anywhere along the way. I was like, I keep trying to convince the wife, let's go out there for the whole week. I'll do 2 events and we'll go see some places. She's not bought into that. I'm like, you can even fly out there. It's going to happen some year, I swear. That or the kids will be in a car and I'll take them out.
Yeah, going out there for a week, though, I mean, that area would be, it's a great area to visit. I mean, so many beautiful, I absolutely love the area I love the mountains being from Colorado and the bay there and everything. It's, in Seattle area. How far is Packwood from Seattle?
I think both of the Portland and Seattle have flown into both. I want to say 2 to 3 hours max. All depends on traffic and the route you take, if you go by Mount St. Helens or not. And it seems like that's the dry time of the year, because every time I've been there, I've never seen rain. I'm like, what? This is great weather.
Oh, yeah, you got lucky then, yeah. First time I went out there, it didn't rain at all. It was absolutely gorgeous. And people were like, yeah, don't expect this next time you come back.
Evidently during the summer, I guess, is their drier period. At least seems like every time I've been there. I'm like, I expect to see some rain. It just has not happened.
Yeah. Summer's definitely the chance to be somewhat dry for sure.
Yeah, well, thank you for all the time and all the insights. Once again, people share your thoughts with him. If you have follow-up questions, I keep swearing that we'll come back with follow-up questions for you guys. It may just be while you answer some questions and record. I don't have to even help you with that per se. So I'm hoping people will, if you're up for it and other people are up for it, if they have specific questions, ask them and we'll try to get them answered.
Yeah, hopefully, like I said, someone will pick up something from it.
I'm sure.
That'd be cool.
Plus, some of the stories are so fun, and hopefully I'll see you out there. I think I'm back in town. Maybe I can make it out there. I think on the 12th you guys have another event at some point.
Yeah, the 12th, 13th is mid-divs, 2-day event, so be a good one to come out for. Get lots of seat time.
Yeah, exactly. Brian's like, you got to get your car all redone. I'm like, what? He's like, you probably don't have time. I'm like, oh, don't throw wrenches in my plans now. I'm like,
right.
Got to figure something out. And somebody else like, you want to co-drive? I'm like, oh, don't confuse me. I feel like I have 6 months till nationals. It's okay.
Right. No, it's right around the corner.
I know.
So,
John, it was fun. I appreciate it.
Hey, man, I appreciate it as well. Thank you so much. It was a good time.
It was fun. thanks for listening. For the show notes and contact information, please visit autocrosstalk.com. There you can also subscribe so that we can keep you up to date on new shows as they come out. Also, please leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe on iTunes for the upcoming shows. You can connect to our Facebook page at facebook.com/autocrosstalk. You can share your thoughts, your insights, your questions, your suggestions there. Also share with your friends. Hopefully you found it entertaining and motivating, and hopefully other people will as well. It's been fun, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening, and check back next week for the next show.